Hello everyone, my name is Christopher Liam Rose. I'm an author, mentor, life coach, motivational speaker, evangelist, musician, and activist. In this audio and podcast for Spiritually Helping Other People podcast, we're going to be sharing a message which is very, very important. I've been sharing the Spiritually Helping Other People podcast to inspire humanity to go through spiritual change, to learn about Jesus Christ, Jehovah, and Buddha, and to learn about no self and selflessness and how to help other people give back and make a difference. Now, the message I've got today is called The Spiritual Light of a Billion Lifetimes. Now, this is a very important message to learn. It's very important you learn about the spiritual light. Now, the spiritual light is when you've discovered who you are as a human being, your spiritual life purpose, your spiritual calling, and the essence of who you are as a human being. Once you discover that spiritual light, then you go through a spiritual change. So the spiritual light comes with a spiritual change. The spiritual change is when your psyche and your psychological mind changes. And that spiritual light helps you to be a source of inspiration for others, helping other people, helping humanity, helping the animals, helping the universe. Now, the spiritual light comes from within you. The light is already within you, right? So you have the light already. You have to find a way to discover it and find that light. Now, the spiritual light of a billion lifetimes, what is that all about? Now, once you come into the work of helping other people, giving back and making a difference, impacting lives, supporting people, and helping other people, then the spiritual light of a billion lifetimes will come into your life. Now, because life is so short, we have birth, life, death. Life is in a very particular order, right? So we're born into the world, and then we live our lives within the world, and then we basically pass away and die within life, right? So everything is connected to life, right? Your heart, your mind, your body, your soul, your spirit, right? So when you spiritually change yourself, when you spiritually change your psyche and your psychological mind, when you spiritually change your life, the psyche of your life changes and the psychological mind changes. That is when you become the spiritual light. And the spiritual light is spiritual enlightenment. Spiritual enlightenment is when you've discovered yourself as a human being. You know your life experiences, you know your challenges, your difficulties, your successes, your failures, and how your life has been up to this point. Now, because the spiritual light is basically the light of a billion lifetimes, once you spiritually change yourself in life, your psyche and your psychological mind, that changes humanity, that changes space, that changes the cosmos, that changes the universe, that changes animals, that changes people, that changes the whole essence of your living. So in life, what needs to change is your psyche and your psychological mind, who you really are as a human being. Now, because life goes through birth, life, death in that order, right? When you're born, you don't have an understanding on how life works. You make mistakes, you do things you're not happy about or proud about, and you go through those experiences. Then you live your life, you try to find out what you need to do in your life, the meaning of your life, the value of your life, and try and find out what's important to you. But then eventually, after all the years that you live on Earth, you basically pass away into the distant future. Now, if you don't change in the way of a spiritual light, which is the source of inspiration for others, helping other people, helping humanity, helping the animals, helping the universe, then when we get to the point when we reach death and pass away, that spiritual light doesn't continue, and that spiritual life doesn't continue. So when it comes to spiritual people and spiritual philosophers, they've been talking about how to spiritually change yourself, the psyche and the psychological mind. How do you change a human being from what they was? So if you had a negative past, abuse, suffering, pain, adversity, trauma, loss, bereavement, whatever your past has been, if you've gone through all those experiences, how do you spiritually change that to move forward into the future? Now, the only way you can spiritually change yourself is when you've known yourself. So, know thyself is how you understand who you are as a human being. If you don't know thyself within your life and go through a spiritual change and a spiritual awakening, you'll live life basically being born, having life, and then passing away without having a spiritual light that continues into the future. Now, no human being knows what happens after life because there's no one that's passed away that's been able to tell us, what happens after your body deteriorates, declines. Your mind goes, your body goes, your heart goes, your body, your feelings and emotions all disappear. No one knows what happens after life. There's no definition to it. No one has the answer to it. All we know as human beings is that we're born into life, we live our life, and then we pass away. So the important thing is, how do you find the spiritual light? How do you find the spiritual light? You have to do the 5 spiritual practices: prayer, meditation, mindfulness, walking, journaling. If you do the 5 spiritual practices within your life, that will change your psyche and your psychological mind. Prayer, meditation, mindfulness, walking, journaling is part of your self-discovery, who you are, the essence of your being, right? Through prayer, through meditation, mindfulness, and walking, you find things about yourself that nobody can tell you, right? And this is what life is all about. Life is teaching us and showing us how do you discover who you are? How do you find the essence of who you are? How do you find your spiritual life purpose and your spiritual calling? Now, it's so important to find that spiritual light. Sometimes, for most people who do discover the spiritual light within their life, they've gone through suffering, pain, and adversity within their life. They've gone through trauma, hardships, and life challenges and problems. So that's what helps them to discover the spiritual light, because they've been through so much as a human being. They've gone through so much trials, tribulations, suffering, pain, and adversities. That's what helps them to be the person of who they are. And then they find the spiritual light and the spiritual enlightenment. Now, in Christianity and Buddhism, Christianity, which Jesus Christ was talking about, was teaching salvation. Buddhism was teaching about suffering, right? So life comes with suffering. Life comes with salvation. So we need to go on the journey of basically going through the suffering, going through the pain, going through the adversity, and then finding salvation or finding spiritual enlightenment. Now, this is a journey of life. This is what the spiritual light is all about. When you have the spiritual light, you're able to help other people, give back, make a difference, make a contribution, help humanity, help the animals, and help the universe. If you don't have the spiritual light, you are unable to help other people, give back, and make a difference. Now, people have beliefs in certain things and values in certain things, right? Your beliefs can become important if you choose to make it important. But the truth is, you have to discover who you are. Nothing changes until you discover who you are. If you don't discover who you are as a human being, like the essence of your life, the purpose of your life, the spiritual calling of your life, the divine assignment that you need to be on. If you don't discover that, then you'll go through life with suffering, pain, and adversity, and not find that spiritual light. Now, because life is always moving from the birth, life, and death, Jehovah, Jesus Christ, and Buddha is trying to show us within our life, in our lifetime, that something needs to change in our lives. Something needs to change. We can't live the life just going through feelings, going through emotions, going through suffering, pains, and adversities. So something will need to change within our lives. Something will need to change. And if we don't find how to change ourselves as a human being, how to discover that, then we can't have the spiritual life of 1,000,000,000 lifetimes. Now, because we don't know what's after death when we pass away, when our physical presence passes away, no human being knows that. We can have a belief about that, we can have an understanding about that, we can have an encouragement about that. But to be very, very honest and very, very true, no human being knows what happens after death. So how you live your life matters on earth. So if you want to find heaven and nirvana on earth, you need to go for a spiritual change and find the spiritual light within life. If you don't find the spiritual change and the spiritual light within life, then it means you haven't gone through the process of spiritual change. So what is the spiritual light? The spiritual light is always doing the work of helping other people, giving back and making a difference. Now, helping other people is not about like yourself, right? I help other people because I earn a living from it. I help other people because I get successful from it. I help other people because I get richer from it. I help other people because I get prosperous from it. I help other people because it helps me to support my family and friends and my loved ones. All selfish activities is not basically going to make you find the spiritual light. So the spiritual change that I'm talking about is not being selfish. You can't be selfish in order to find the spiritual light. So people will say, oh, but I've got my family, I've got my children, I've got my partner, I've got my husband, I've got my wife, I've got my job, I've got my career, I've got my volunteering, I've got my business, I've got this, I've got my faith, I've got my religion. Well, you need to change all of that. All of that needs to change. Now, to get to the point where we basically find the spiritual life of a billion lifetimes, we have to change ourselves. Nothing in life changes unless we change ourselves. Unless we change ourselves, and like I said, I've always said that changing yourself is not an easy thing to do in life, right? It's very, very difficult. I'm not saying that changing yourself it's just gonna happen in a couple of days or a couple of weeks. The spiritual light of a billion lifetimes can take your whole life. It can take all of your life. But the spiritual enlightenment is part of the journey of life, right? So we're not meant to be human beings that are going through suffering, pain, and adversity. And I'm not going to say that, in life that suffering and pain and adversity doesn't happen to people. It does happen to people. We do go through suffering, we do go through pain, we do go through adversity, we do go through challenges, we do go through problems, we do go through hardships, we do go through disappointments, we do go through struggles, we do go through that. But you need to change all of that. And how do you change all of that? You find the spiritual light within yourself. The light is within you. That's what you find. When you find the spiritual light that's within you, that's when your life changes. That's where your life changes. Then you start to do the work of helping other people, giving back, making a difference, making a contribution, and impacting lives. Faith, spirituality, religion is important in life because it helps us to discover who we are more. But the truth is, there's no point of believing in a faith or religion or belief or spirituality if you haven't gone through a process of spiritual change yourself. So religion, faith and spirituality can become important once you go through a spiritual change. So people say, but I've never gone through a spiritual change. I've never changed my consciousness. I've never changed my personality. I've never changed my behavior. I've never changed my mentality. I've never changed the way I do my actions or the way I think or the way I behave. Okay, that's fine, but you will need to find a way to change that, right? Now, what's the most important thing about the spiritual light? The spiritual light is a spiritual change. The spiritual change comes when you change yourself. So, what's the spiritual light of a billion lifetimes? The spiritual life of a billion lifetimes is when you've been given an opportunity, and each human being has the opportunity. You've been given an opportunity to live your life where you're helping other people, giving back, making a difference and a contribution. Where you're helping humanity, helping the animals, and helping the universe. Where you're making a contribution and when you're making a difference. That comes into the process of the 5 levels of helping other people. Level 1, volunteering, the good level in helping other people. Level 2, jobs, careers, employment, the great level in helping other people. Level 3, business entrepreneurship, the highest level in helping other people. Level 4, faith and spiritual, the spiritual levels in helping other people. Level 5, spiritually helping other people who help other people, the teaching level in helping other people. So the spiritual light of 1,000,000,000 lifetimes is when you're helping other people and what they're going through. When you do all 5 levels in helping other people. And why is the spiritual light of 1,000,000,000 lifetimes so important? Because our life is, we're born into life, we live our life, and then we pass away and die. So how you live your life on the journey of your own life matters. So the legacy you leave behind will live on. So I'll repeat it again. The legacy you leave behind will live on. So if you've lived your life where you're helping other people, helping humanity, helping the animals, helping the universe, and giving back and making a difference, that will live on. People see you not because of your suffering, pain, and adversity, not because of your disappointments and your struggles, not because of your feelings and emotions, or how you've not processed your life or understood your life. People see you for the spiritual difference, the spiritual contributions, the impact, the help, the significance and difference you've made into people's lives. So the spiritual light of 1,000,000,000 lifetimes is when you help other people. That's when it starts. We don't know what death's gonna have in the future because all human beings are gonna experience it. So we will never know what happens until we basically pass away and lose our life. But what's important is, have you gone through a process of spiritual change in life? Have you found who you are as a human being? Have you discovered your skills, your gifts, and your talents as a human being? Have you discovered who you need to be, what you need to do, your divine assignment, your mission in life? Now, if you don't find that, and this is where life basically comes down to meaning and value. If you don't find that, if you don't find, okay, this is my life purpose, this is my spiritual calling, this is my mission, this is what I need to do, this is what I'm called to do, this is my impact, this is how I'm going to help other people, this is the work and vocation I'm going to be a part of, this is the way I'm going to make my difference. If you don't find that, then you don't have a spiritual light that basically is of 1,000,000,000 lifetimes. Now the people, because obviously space and time is very hard to understand, right? Because we're not, the world we're living in, it's not a physical world. It may look physical because we have a body, we have a mind, we have a heart, we have a brain, we have our feelings and emotions and our thoughts and our thinking. It may seem like the life that we're living is physical. It may actually seem like that. It's a physical life that we're living. But when you've understood who you are, when you find the no self and selflessness, when you know thyself, and when you go through a process of spiritual change, you realize that space and time and the world we're living in is not necessarily a physical world. It's not physical. Everything in life is in a void, right? Because obviously, if you read the book of Genesis in the Bible, it says that the Lord God, Jehovah, before he started to do creation of the world and the universe, Jehovah first basically had to come into space, right? Which is everything that we're living at the moment, our whole life, right? So space was part of living. But if you read in the Genesis book within the Bible, you can see that there was a void. Then in the scriptures of the Bible, it says that Jehovah brought light into the world. The light was the light of living. The light was the light of creation. The light was the light of life. So at the very beginning of time, at the very beginning of space, something was created and something was brought into life. That's why we experience the life that we have today. But the spiritual light of 1,000,000,000 lifetimes means when you've gone through a spiritual change and when you found yourself, discovered who you are, your talents, your gifts, your skills, your abilities, you discover that you actually are living a life that Jehovah has called you to do. Because Jehovah basically wants you to be the spiritual light of the world. That doesn't mean you don't go through suffering. That doesn't mean you don't go through pain. That doesn't mean you don't go through adversity. It means the spiritual light of a billion lifetimes is within you because you've spiritually changed to find it. So it's a very important message, this is. But the message is, to find the spiritual light, you have to find who you are. The know self, selflessness, and know thyself. The only way you can find selflessness, the know self, and know thyself is when you've gone for a spiritual change. And a spiritual change is really what changes life. The change within your psyche and your psychological mind. So if your psyche and your psychological mind changes, which is the most, nothing in life becomes more difficult than this. It can take your whole lifetime to really figure it out. But this is the life that we're living at the moment. We have to discover that. So if you don't change your psyche and your psychological mind, you can't basically change your life. And if you can't change your life, it means you're not living the spiritual light within the world. Because as human beings, we all have light within us. Whether we've had a traumatic past, disappointment, struggles, suffering, pain, and adversities, we all have a light within us, right? So as human beings, we need to discover that. We need to find that. If we don't find that within our daily life, and this is why it's so important to go through the journey of spiritual change, if we don't find that within our daily life, I didn't say within the future, because the future is death. That is the future of all humanity. We can't avoid it. So I'm not necessarily saying in the future we're going to find it. We're going to find it in day-to-day life today, in the present, in the now. If you don't find the spiritual light in daily life now, in the present, in your daily living, not your past, because you can't change that past, even when you're a baby, up until a teenager, up until an adult, it's already gone past in time. You can't go back to those stages in life. All human beings are evolving and going into the future anyway. So basically, you need to change yourself today. You need to change your life today. You need to change your behavior today. You need to change the way you live your life today. That is a daily thing. That should be something that happens in daily life. Now people say, "Oh, but it's going to be difficult. It's going to be challenging." Nothing in life doesn't come without difficulties or challenges, because this is life. So, spiritual life of a billion lifetimes means once you've gone through a spiritual change, no matter what happens to you in your life, no matter what you've experienced, no matter what you've gone through, no matter whatever you've experienced in your living life, right? That spiritual life light lives on, and that spiritual life will continue. Now, the spiritual light is the legacy you leave behind on earth also as well, because look, think of it like this, right? And I will finish once I've said this. As human beings, every day we're getting closer to death. I think I've said this in messages before, right? So because we're getting closer to death every single day, we may wake up, we may sleep, we may eat, we may work, we may do those things. Okay, that's fine. But we're always moving into the future anyway. That's just part of life. Each human being is. So how you live your daily day-to-day life matters now, not in the future. Not when you get to the future and then you pass away, but how you live your day-to-day life matters now. If you want to find what truth is, if you want to find what meaning is, if you want to find what value is, you spiritually change now. You spiritually find your life purpose now. You spiritually find your calling now, and you spiritually find who you are as a human being. And when you find yourself as who you are as a human being, it's normally this: the know self, selflessness, and which equals to faith and spirituality and truth, right? So the know self, know thyself, selflessness, that's what you find when you find yourself as a human being. It means, yes, you have gone through problems. Yes, you have gone through suffering. Yes, you have gone through pain. But that doesn't reflect the person who you are now, because the spiritual light is within you. In creation, like I said in the audio already, that's what Jehovah created. Jehovah, the God of all living creation, created the spiritual light in life. And then as the world continued to evolve, and as the centuries, the histories, the years of people coming and going and passing away within life, the spiritual light was still within the living, because Jehovah created it at the beginning of time, of the beginning, basically at the beginning of space and time. It was already created. So that spiritual light is what Jehovah and Jesus Christ is trying to find within us. And each human being needs to find it within them. And if you don't find it within yourself, you can't help other people in what they're going through. You would not do the work of supporting people. You cannot support or impact or inspire or motivate another individual. So don't be confused with how important spiritual light is. And the spiritual light, no matter what happens to you as a human being, no matter where you are as a human being on earth, no matter like what happens to you, your situations and circumstances, or where you go, that spiritual light lives on. And that spiritual light lives on basically into eternity. So as a human being, you've gone through that process of spiritual change. As a human being, you've gone through that process of discovering the no self and selflessness. As a human being, you know thyself, you understand yourself, you get your life experiences, you get it. That's what moves into eternity. And that's the thing with life, because we're all going to pass away anyway. So how you live your day-to-day life matters now, not tomorrow, not the day after, not the year after, but today. How you live your day-to-day life matters now. Right now, in the present, right now in time and space, and right now for your own life. So change your daily life. Change your psyche. Change your psychological mind. And then once you've changed all that, live your spiritual life purpose, live your spiritual calling, live your spiritual mission within daily life. Jehovah brought the spiritual light into the world to inspire people to live life spiritually, faithfully, truly. And that is what you're called to do. So thank you for listening now. I hope this has helped. Remember, the spiritual light of 1,000,000,000 lifetimes is when you spiritually changed, discovered no self, discovered selflessness, discovered know thyself, and you do the work of helping other people, giving back and making a difference. And that's how you live the spiritual legacy now. That's how you live your spiritual life purpose now. And that's how you find your divine assignment and mission in life. Spiritually help other people now, within daily life. Okay, thank you for listening now. Take care now. Bye now.